Okay guys, we're going to solve by using Cramer's rule. This video is going to be a little bit longer than the ones we're used to because I wanted to get everything into one video. I wanted to teach you the rules when we're solving using Cramer's rule, and then at the end show you how to apply it. So just bear with me on this. First thing we're going to do is we're going to get a system of equations. We're going to have 3 equations with 3 variables. We're going to use x, y, and z right here because it's going to be the easiest way to show how we're going to solve this. So this is our system that we've got. I know we've been solving systems of equations, and I know we've solved by tables and by graphing and by substitution and by elimination, but this is another way to do this. So what we're going to do is we're going to name our columns. So first thing we need to do is we need to get everything written the same way. So we have our x values first, then y's, then z's, and then our constant values. So we're going to label our x column. So all of our x values are A, y column is B, the z column will be labeled C, and the answer or the consonant column will be labeled D. Okay, so the first thing we'll do is in step 1, we're going to find the determinant. And when I say find the determinant, it's also basically just saying we're going to find what D equals. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up a matrix using our system of equations that we have right here. So what we'll write is A1, B1, and C1. And what I mean by that is we're going to look at this as like A is a column, B is a column, and C is a column. And then these 3 equations go by row 1, row 2, and row 3. So our A1 value would be writing in, or would be X. So our number value, or numerical value, would just be 1. Our B1 value is negative Y, so that would just be a negative 1. And our C1 value is just a Z, or 1. So then we'll make it a 3 by 3 matrix. We'll follow with A2, B2, C2, and then A3, B3, and C3. So after we've done that, we're going to find D of X, okay? And I know all this seems really complicated, but towards the end of this video, I'll put everything into practice so you'll understand. I'm just hoping you're taking notes right now and understanding how we're going to find each of these values. So to find D sub X, or subscript X, the change we're going to make, instead of looking back and looking at step 1 where we had A1, B1, C1, A2, B2, C2, and so on, now you'll see that in our X column, our A column, we have the D values. And remember, our D values were the answers or the constants that were at the end of our equations in the D column. So when we're solving for X, just think that our X values are being substituted, and instead of using the actual X values, we're substituting those with the D column, and you'll see that that trend will continue. So we'll follow it with D2, B2, C2, D3, B3, and C3. Next, we'll find D sub Y, or D sub Y. And basically that means we're going to be doing the exact same thing, except in our Y column we'll substitute the D values instead of the X column like we did for D of X. We're now in D sub Y. So in the Y column where the B's were, we're going to substitute a D value in, just as they were in our systems back at the beginning of this problem. After that, we'll find D sub Z. And as you can imagine, we'll substitute that Z column, or the column that was our C values, we'll substitute that with the D column. So as you see, when we're finding our sub values, whatever sub value we're finding, we're substituting that D column of values in the column for whatever sub value we're finding. So after we have our D value, our D sub X, D sub Y, and D sub Z, once we found all of those values, we're going to apply Cramer's rule. Okay, and so what Cramer's rule actually says is this, is that our X value, we'll take that D sub X, that value we found that's D sub X, and we're going to divide that by just the regular D value. So our D sub X value will be the one where it was D1, B1, C1, and that matrix. Whatever our answer is when we find that matrix, we'll divide that by our matrix of just our D value. And then we'll do the same thing for D sub Y, or to find our Y value, and do the same thing to find our Z value. So again, this is just like solving a system of equations. It's just another way. Okay, now I know I haven't told you how to solve this matrix yet. No, we're not going to use diagonals here. Instead, we're going to go back and we're going to apply the rule that we learned about second order determinants. Okay, that's where, remember, we do A times D minus B times C. If you don't remember second order determinants, I would highly recommend you going back to watching that video of second order determinants. So what we've done here is we've got the exact same equation that we had at the beginning of the problem. So our columns we know are still labeled A, B, C, and D. A column being with the X values, the B column being with the Y values, C column being with the Z values, and then the D column is our answer column or our consonant column. So let's find D. So let's set that matrix up first. Remember, this is what our matrix will look like for D. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go in and substitute the numerical values that go with each one of these representations. So the D matrix would look like this. Okay, if you're having an issue understanding, pause the video now and look at how I took the numerical values in front of each variable for each representation. So like if you'll look at B3, okay, in the corresponding numerical value I have -2, and if you'll look in the third equation I have -2y. So obviously I don't take the variable, I'm just taking the numerical value. Now when we solve, here's how we solve. We're going to say D equals, and we're going to create these matrices like this, okay? So let me back up just a little bit. What I've done is this, is I've taken our top row in our D matrix, and I take my first number in my first row, which is a 1. Then I create a matrix beside it that is only using values that are not in the same row or same column as that 1. So as you'll see right here, this setup, I took this number 1 and then I used the matrix that was given or remaining when I didn't use any values in the same row or column as this 1. So what I'm saying is this: I won't use any of these values and I won't use these values. So that only leaves me with the matrix of 1, 1, -2, and 2. And as you see, that's the matrix that I have that goes with 1. Now, the next value that I've got is I subtract and then go to my second value, which is a -1. So as you see, I took the -1 right here. And with this -1, I'm going to take the values that are still not there. So taking this -1, remember I subtracted right here, okay? You're going to subtract the first time, okay? And then I'll tell you what we'll do the second time. But we're taking our -1 right here, okay? We're not going to use any values here or any values here. So my matrix that's left is 2, 1, -1, and 2. And as you see, that's what's in that matrix. Now, the last step for this 1 right here is I'm going to add. Okay, so I'll add 1. Again, not using these values, not using these values. The matrix that's left is 2, 1, -1, and -2. Now, this is what I was telling you earlier. All you're going to do is use your second order determinant to solve what's inside these matrices, okay? So you'll bring down what's outside, and then you'll just solve by using a second order determinant, which is all you've seen that I've done here. Once you get to this point, all you've got to do is just simplify and just work your way through it. Make sure you're remembering that when we're doing second order determinants, you are subtracting. When you multiply A times D, you're subtracting B times C, okay? So make sure you're keeping your positives and negatives in the right order. So I'll just fast forward through all of this and let you see if you get the right answer once you simplify. When you work through all of this, you should get your answer for D is equal to 6. So keep this value, hang on to it, because we're going to end up needing to find 4 values. Remember, we need to find D, D sub X, D sub Y, and D sub Z. Let's keep going. So again, same thing. Now we're going to find D sub X. Now let's remember, when we do D sub X, think of it like we're substituting our X values for our D column. Okay, so now our X values are gone and we've substituted our D column. So when we rewrite this, we're going to take that 4, 7, and -1 and write it in place of A1, A2, and A3. Now, B and C, 1, 2, and 3 will stay the same. Now, we'll set it up the exact same way as we did when we did our determinant of D. So we'll do 4, -1, and 1, Okay, subtracting the first two and adding the last one. Okay, remembering to only use the numbers or the values that aren't in the same row or column as your values in the top row. And then you're going to just solve by, again, your second order determinant. Okay, so I'm just going to, for time's sake, because this video is already over 10 minutes long, I want you guys to be able to simplify for d sub x, keep that value. Now let's go find d sub y really quick. Now remember, for d sub y, we're substituting our y column with the d column. So A and C, 1, 2, and 3 will now go back to the same, but instead our y column, or our b values, will be substituted with the d values. And then for d sub z, our a and b columns will stay the same. The c column, or our z values, will then be substituted with our d column, which is the 4, 7, and -1. So after all of that, remember, we have the answers for d sub x, d sub y, and d sub z. Now we apply Cramer's rule. And applying Cramer's rule, we're going to find our value for x. We use the determinant of x, or d sub x, and we're going to divide that by the determinant d, which was 6. Okay? Then to find our y value, we'll take our d sub y, or determinant of y, and divide that by the determinant of d, or just our d value, again, divided by 6, and then do the same thing for z. So give this a shot. If we have issues, I promise we'll cover it more in class. Give it a chance. Make sure you've taken plenty of notes on this, and tomorrow we'll make sure that we go in this at much greater depth.